Hey there, I'm a trusty spade and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to the first of three Bob Dylan Newport Folk Festival sets. If you're new here, I am a big music nerd and a sometimes music player who has somehow managed to spend multiple decades on this earth avoiding Bob Dylan amidst the many, many, many thousands of artists I've listened to. I've managed to keep completely away from his discography somehow. I'd heard a few songs, but mostly it was all fresh to me. And so I started from the very beginning, listening to his music and reacting to it on this channel. And I just recently reacted to in my last video to his 1965 San Francisco press conference, which was really interesting and enlightening, recommended by some of the commenters. So I thought, since especially the last album I listened to was the delightful, iconic Highway 61 Revisited. And I have Blonde on Blonde coming up next, a double album, a big, big deal, one that I'm feeling very excited for. But because I might not have a chance to sit down and record and listen to it for a little bit, I thought I might tide folks over by checking out some of these iconic Newport Folk Festival performances from the Other Side of the Mirror concert documentary. I've also had a lot of other documentaries about Bob recommended to me. I am going to watch them. I think I've reached at I'm going to watch the two Scorsese ones. I'm going to watch the other one from the '60s about his UK tour. I can't remember the names of any of them. And I'll probably watch that fictitious film with a bunch of different Bobs that I can't remember the name of also, from like the mid aughts. But I'm going to do that on my own time, not here, for a bunch of reasons. This is meant to be, maybe one day I'll do reaction to other stuff, but this is meant to be a music reaction stuff. I mean, this channel is meant to be whatever I want it to be, but I'm keeping it to music reaction right now of the reaction content. Um, and music related. And yes, that's music related. I don't know about movies, man. I'm not obviously not making money yet on this channel, but maybe one day I would like to. And I don't, music. I feel comfortable, like I can figure it out, and work with the copyright system. Movies, even if they're music movies, I feel a little bit more sketch. But I want to watch them on my own time. But I do want to check out these Newport Folk Festival shows because they are a man in transition, and I think it's really interesting. Now, what I am going to do here is I'm going to divide this video into three separate videos and actually three separate recording sessions. Sorry. I just got back from a Ethio jazz show at the Vancouver Jazz Festival. It was delightful, beautiful day. If you hear explosions and booms in the background, it's the 4th of July and I live close to the American border. So, we're getting a little bit of the Yankee celebration in the background here. But I'm just going to react to the first of these three sets, the 1963 set today, in his protest folk singer era, at least from how I understand and perceive it. There is a nice little someone's, divided it into the chapters. And it looks like it is a little bit more leaning on yes, the kind of times they are a change in era and, freewheeling for these first two, for this first set. Um, what else do I know? What other context do I have before I stop babbling and finally getting into this? I'm aware that the Newport Folk Festival was created as a sort of companion to the long-standing Newport Jazz Festival, Rhode Island, which was started in the '50s and continues to this day. I know that this festival, besides the Jazz Festival people, Al Grossman, who I believe is his name, big music manager, was involved, and also Pete Seeger was involved in getting this off the ground. That it ran through the '60s, then went off for a while, and came back in the mid '80s, where it has continued to this day. And I know that this is one of the locations that later, not today, but when we listen to some of the later sets, Bob started to really make some folk purists mad with his decisions to expand the instrumentation and style of music that he created. But with that in mind, I think I've said everything I need to say. I'm excited to see young baby Bob in his prime in 1963. Yeah, July 26th looks most like July 26th into the 28th. So, Clementine Baez afternoon workshops. I'm excited. It looks Peter Paul and Mary doing blow. It's gonna be great. I'm very excited to see him at the kind of the peak of his protest singer era. Let's go. Cute. Just before we get into it, what a lovely intro. I love that idea. I think that's so true of where music and where popular music comes from through so much of history. We can get into the nitty gritty, and this might be something we'll talk about on the channel someday about how that's been complicated with mass entertainment, mass media, algorithms, and the way that, especially high level popular success can kind of be an Ouroboros of a self feeding snake that sustains itself. Um, but for most of history, for most of the human experience, it wasn't that people had some sort of magic quality. There's so much music always being made. It's that they were making the music that people wanted and needed to hear in that moment. And in the early 60s, in the time of the civil rights marches and the prelude to the Vietnam War, and the question of, you know, of whether the prosperity of the 50s is something that is for everyone, that the American dream is for everyone, or whether it's for a select few. I think that they needed it. And look at this little baby boy. He's so cute. Look at this cool lady. Everyone in the 60s looks so effortlessly. It's really cool because so much of like this is an early Bob song, and so many of his early songs are building on the legacy of American music, American popular music, Black American popular music. And a big part of the folk songs and the protest songs legacy that he's building from, that I'm familiar with, is the history of coal songs, coal miner songs, especially from Kentucky and the Appalachians. Harlan County, USA, the Barbara Koppel film, is one of my favorite movies ever. It's just a staggering documentary about a strike in the coal mines in the 70s of Harlan County, Kentucky. Um, and yeah, there's just so many of these, what side are you on? Type songs, these classic kind of union or workers ballads, come from these coal mining towns. It's cool to see Bob kind of do his own one that speaks to his own history and his own origins, as someone from Minnesota speaking to the iron mining towns of the northern United States. It's cool. And I wonder, I again, I know I'm judging or assuming because of the banjo. I feel like there must be some people from this folk tradition of the Appalachian, like old time and coal singers and things like that. And I wonder if they saw or feel that connection too, and that legacy or lineage in this song in that moment. It's cool to think about. Because like you have to imagine, most of the people who are coming to me talking about Bob Dylan now are either going to be people, if you were around when he was around, you're probably up there in age, right? And the people who were old when Bob Dylan was coming around, even if they were into them, probably not around anymore. So it is crazy to think about and kind of wonder. Like we often hear about like how old people of the time, older generations of the time, react negatively. But like, what about I want to know I want to know about the people who were 70 years old in 1962 and love Bob Dylan. What were their stories? Who were they? What did they? Because they lived from since the 19th century. It's an interesting question for me. I mean, in the same venue, I'd love to know like how 70, if there were 70 to 80-year-old fans of bands like at their start of bands like the Beatles, obviously, or even King Crimson or Black Sabbath or something. That's a funny idea, but perhaps a question for a different day. It's always crazy to think about how many, like this is true of so much of the human experience and of human settlement, but I think it is especially true in the Americas, in the places of colonialism and resource extraction, of towns that are built to take and take and take and extract lumber, minerals, furs, even in the early days, what have you, oil. And when that dries up, the place is just left and abandoned, a skeleton of what it was, and people desperate to make something of their lives. I read a really great book about this a few years ago called Hinterland, by Phil Neal, I believe, um, that kind of talked about the collapse of not just the economic structure, but the entire social and community structure of lots of resource towns throughout North America, and how that gap has left an opening for a lot of the extremely polarized politics and extremely desperate situations that we find people in today. It's just it's cool how that weaves into an iconic artist singing an iconic song 60 years ago. I've never been to a festival because they're often ludicrously expensive or very far away, and I am a poor boy. And so I like standing at shows. The idea of standing outside in front of a stage for 8 hours in a day does sound sort of like a nightmare to me. God, there's this metal festival, A Light in the Mountains. I can't remember the name, but it's this festival. And anyway, Neurosis is playing in Montana and I'm very happy about it. And I wish I could go. I wish I had the money to go camp out in the mountains and see a bunch of post metal and gothic country, but I can't. And it's that that's the most I've ever wanted to go to one, but it's not happening. But it's like I've been to a few small ones. I just said I was at the jazz festival, right? Um, I don't know. I don't want to cook, man, but also like my brain's gonna get hot. I got too much hair. I'm too fluffy for this. These guys got to be so toasted brained. But also, it looks incredibly cozy. It looks like a nice swarm. His voice, oh my god. I've never heard her sing before that I know of. Probably heard a few songs in passing. She's someone else I want to check out. Maybe on the channel, maybe not. Um, God, but that like natural vibrato, which is always just so good and so beautiful. I think of the Community episode, natural vibrato. It's the Glee one. But it's beautiful, and it gives such like a nice clean kind of upper not warm kind of warbling bird song. I don't know the right words to use, but you have the kind of rough and tumble with God on my side. Like I think Bob's voice is good. I think people are too hard on it, but it's not a conventional voice, and she has this not like classically pretty, which isn't to say it's not pretty. It's incredibly beautiful, but in a bit more of a raw, folksy way with that vibrato and these like big pushed kind of higher pitch. It just adds another layer that's really feels very good on the brain. It's like this started as a maybe a commentary on the apocalypse or an inevitable World War III about anxiety about nuclear Armageddon, but it really feels more like a call out of hyper individualism as it's developing in American culture, and calcifying into and sorry to be the one with bearer bad news. I think it's only gotten worse since the '60s. Barry Goldwater hasn't even run for president yet, man. It's only gonna get wilder from here. Uh, um, but I do think that's such a resonant like subtler meaning potentially of this song, that this idea that the true fear is that you ask for help when somebody fires a shotgun at you when you just want a string bean. You're alone and nobody's there to look out for you. We're all just in it for ourselves. That is maybe the real apocalypse.
When all the people can be half right.
You know, people. I don't know much about the relationship between, like, I know there is a history, but the relationship between race and boxing in the United States. But there is a point to be made about the fact that an element of it was, obviously there were a lot of white boxers, but also young black boxers getting potentially permanent or fatal damage to entertain a diverse audience, but let's be clear, probably a predominantly white audience. And for all the merits of boxing as a sport, there is maybe some questions and reflections we should be having about that, and the demand for that to see people beat each other bloody. I'm not immune from the appeal of some good blood sport or combat sport. I'm not a sport guy per se, but of the sports, I like hockey a lot personally because it's people beating the crap out of each other. But we do have to ask why, and what is the cost of these on the young men and women who participate. And sometimes it's death. And I like how Bob is setting up this narrative of everyone's going to, I assume, try to escape culpability in this, when it's kind of a larger systemic thing, or just a tragic accident, or both. Every verse. But I also think there's question, just because we enjoy something and it can be done okay-ish, do we need boxing? Do we need boxing? But then on the other hand, are we ever going to be able to escape it if people are going to voluntarily do it? And if there is going to be a benefit in financial fame or whatever to doing it. And, this is a conversation perhaps for another time, but this can relate to the conversation on fireworks, which can be disruptive, destructive, even dangerous, and a fire hazard. But a lot of people, if you raise that to them, get real mad and go, I need my pretty fireworks. And listen, I understand they are pretty. They look cool. But we have to ask if looks cool and is a tradition is, when we have more information, have the information is enough to just be like, all right, we're good. I think, fireworks are cool, but perhaps we as a species should move on to something new and maybe a little bit less harmful and destructive for birds, cetaceans, people with war trauma, etc., etc. Um, and the same question of, do we need to, keep doing Bloodsport? And I mean, the sadder answer could be like, well, we haven't been managed to get away from it, so maybe we do. Um, and again, I don't even think we need to stop boxing, but it is good to ask these questions, and I appreciate. I really like how this song's being framed. I love this song. This song rules. Um, it's so delightful. I'm sad it didn't make the cut for any of his studio records, but I'm glad it's at least preserved. I've been really blessed to see a couple of like once in a lifetime concerts, like things where you're like, it's kind of special that I was there in this moment. Often for me, I feel like it relates with death. People who pass away after. So I'm grateful I got to see Soundgarden once. I'm grateful. I'm grateful I got to see Injury Reserve before Stepa J. Groggs passed in 2019. Which then when I saw them opening for Black Midi and they were playing by the time I got to Phoenix after Grog's passing, and kind of that album so shaped by his death, it was even more kind of a special, surreal moment, having been in a very small crowd of people who saw them when they were in Vancouver previously. Like, I'm talking like less than 100. But like, and I didn't know in the moment that that was going to feel like a big deal, like an important show that was like, and it, I don't think it's a show that's going to go down in history like this show, but like that I was in the moment where I was seeing an act that have gotten more popular and beloved and have had a really interesting journey, Injury Reserve, this kind of experimental rap group, if you aren't familiar, in a moment before, that I didn't know, because it was 2019, that that by the time they were back again, everything would, first of all, COVID would happen, but also that they'd lose one of their key members and everything would be different by the time they were back again. And yeah, it's just such a surreal thing to be in those moments. The few I've experienced. So I can't even imagine how people, as time went on in this years past, how they reflect those who were at this show, at this festival, at this 1963 one, which I think, from what I understand, is the very first one. Like how that would ripple throughout your life as a memory that you kind of have to sit with, like not necessarily a core or like I mean, some people probably do go, I was at Newport all the time, but also just something that you like sit with and like realize its meaning to you in your own life's journey and your own relationship to art. Just a cool idea. I'll let this actually finish now so that I can wrap up my thoughts.
The Freedom Singers don't.
Oh my god. Okay, there we go. So leave it there. 1963. And Bob, so early in his career, just a baby, and what a string of performances. All those songs. I mean, they already feel so potent hearing them in studio, and then thinking about how they would be received and engaged with in a live setting just like is so resonant and powerful to think about, and think about how every single person in the audience is hearing those words at a time where they really feel critical. Like, I'm not going to say that they're all were completely new concepts to people, but for a lot of people, they might be pointing things in directions that they never really considered or thought about till they heard those songs. I think that's cool. And it's really cool to see Bob in this formative stage. And, next we'll get to see as he changes it up and starts to piss people off. So if you want to see that, subscribe, drop a like, stick around. I'll be back soon with the rest of these Newport Bob Dylan shows, as well as with Blonde on Blonde and the rest of his discography to come. I've been a Trustee Spade. Thank you for sticking around. I'll see you later.